How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to show you my favorite line to leader connection. Over the years, I've tried a whole bunch of ways to attach my leader to my fly line, and though some have been better than others, this little micro loop here is hands down the best. This is a super slim, very strong connection, and it offers probably the fastest way to tie a new leader onto your line on the water if you have some sort of failure. So I've been using it for around 2 years through 2 world championships, a number of local competitions, and a couple hundred days on the water. Never had a single issue, a lot of upsides and very few downsides. And I'm going to show you how to put one on the end of your fly line. And to start this off, I'm going to say most of this information I got from my friend and teammate, Devin Olsen. He has a great video of how to do this on his channel, Tactical Fly Fisher. I just do mine in a slightly different way that I found works a little bit better for me, which is what I'm going to be showing you guys today. And one other thing to note is that this is really for braid core lines only. The mono core fly lines aren't as good with this little loop here. There are some better ways to attach leaders to those lines, which I may do videos on in the future. But if that's what you use, this probably isn't for you. To start off, you're going to want to cut the loop off, cut it back to some fresh coating, somewhere around an inch from the tip. So we're just going to slice it off there. Once you've got your line cut, then we're going to come in with some 2 or 3x tippet or leader material. What you use exactly doesn't really matter. I'm going to use some colored Semperfli material here, just so you guys can see. What's important is that 2 to 3x range. You need it strong enough that it's not going to just break when you try and strip off the coating, but thin enough that it's going to bite in and get it off pretty cleanly. So 2 to 3x, kind of tending towards 3x is the best size I've found. What you're going to do with this is you're going to make a loop just like this. You're going to put your thumb and forefinger through the loop. You're going to come down and around so that your thumb and forefinger are now on the outside of that loop, and there's a loop of line around both individually. You're going to pinch them together, let go, and then grab it like that. So you're holding kind of where everything comes together. And it's going to be a nice loop just like that. And I've got a thicker piece to show you here because this can get a little confusing. So what you're going to do, thumb and forefinger, bring it around, pinch where all those meet together, and you're going to end up with something that looks a lot like this. So I'm going to do that with this leader material. You can do it pretty fast. And then all I'm going to do, take the fly line tip, stick it through that loop, and I'm going to cinch it down 1.5 inches or so above the fly line tip. So right around there. I'm going to cinch it down pretty tight, I'm going to seat it, and then I'm just going to pull. What that's going to do is it's going to strip off the coating. So there's your fly line coating here, and you're just left with the nice braid core part here. Once you get your coating stripped off, got this bare braid core here, I'm going to get a size 8 hook. Pretty much any will do. What you're looking for is that nice wire diameter that's going to make a good loop size. So I found that size 8 tends to work the best. If you want it a little bigger, you can go to a thicker wire size, bigger hook, whatever. If you want it smaller, you can go to a little smaller one. But size 8 generally tends to be the best. What I'm going to do here is come in with some wire clippers and just clip the tip off this hook. And that is going to save you a lot of pain and suffering later. I've certainly put a lot of holes in my fingers trying to make these loops in the past. Started cutting off the hook point just to kind of remedy that issue. So we're going to put it in the vise backwards with what the hook point would be facing up. So just like this. Now that we got our hook in the vise, I'm just going to come grab our thread. I really like this Semperfli Nanosilk 18-aught. It's super thin and super strong, so you can make a really slim bomb-proof loop. And it's definitely the best thread I found. I'm going to take our line, wrap it around the bend of the hook like so, and you want it so that that coating is just almost touching the hook shank, but not Once you have it situated, you're gonna come grab your thread and you're gonna hold it in the same fingers that you're using to hold that line. You're just gonna start loosely wrapping as close to that hook shank as you possibly can. As I start to get it locked in, I'm just gonna wrap progressively tighter. And probably gonna do 10 to 20 wraps total, depending on how you feel. If you feel it's locked off earlier, you can do less. If you want it a little bit more sure, you can do more. All right, so I feel like it's good there. Going to pull this tag into the thread taut. I'm gonna just cut it as flush as possible to the line. And this thread does not cut super well, so sharp scissors really help. And then this is the part where you can run into some trouble, because if you didn't lock that off really well, it can all unravel right here because it is kind of slippery thread. So I'm just going to do some loose wraps over where I made that cut, and then if I feel like it's good, I'm just going to come tighter and tighter. When I feel like that's locked off, I'm going to take this braid, and again, I'm just going to cut it as flush as possible to the main line. I'm going to take my thread, I'm just going to wrap over that to kind of trap all of those stray fibers after I made that cut. Make a couple tight wraps. Then I'm just going to continue wrapping this just a little bit up into the main fly line. I'm going to make a couple tight wraps up there. I'm going to take some slack out of this bobbin, and if you made your wraps tight enough, it should be kind of locked into that coating, and little slack is not going to make it all unravel. Just going to cut this thread free from my bobbin, and we're going to make some half hitches by taking the thread and placing it under the line and back through itself. And I'm going to cinch these half hitches at the top of that threaded area, and I'm going to pull them real tight. And I'm just going to do 2 or 3 because we're going to come in with some super glue and really lock this down in a second, so you don't need to tie it off too hard. When I feel good about it, come in, cut it as flush as possible. Now we're almost done. All we got to do is add a little bit of super glue. So I'm going to do a small dab, enough to cover that. And if you get too much on, you can just use your fingers, take it off, and then we're just going to kind of wiggle this off the hook shank there. And once you pull it off, you are pretty much done. All you got to do, leave it for a couple hours to make sure it's cured the rest of the way, and you'll be set to go. So this is how I like to make my micro loops. It's done me pretty well. The good thing about them is that they will tend to fray to the point that you can no longer thread a leader through before they're ever going to get to the point where they're going to break. So you'll know when they need to be replaced well before you have a critical failure on the water. So again, I have some Semperfli material here, and all you got to do when you want to tie a leader to this loop is thread it through, give it a little twist until you have about 5 turns in there, put the leader back through, wet it, and pull tight. And that's it. That's your connection. Just trim the tag. That's why I love this little loop so much, because it is so fast and so easy to use. And That's a pretty bomb-proof connection right there. So hopefully those instructions were clear enough and you all have micro loops on the end of your fly lines by now. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll take a look when I get a chance. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe.